Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. This is Victor. We're joined again with Garen for the second episode, the second part of our breakdown of the 25 points, and Victor with part 11.
All right, so part 1 through 10 yesterday was about who the German people are. Now we're going to get into what those people now demand. So they demand that all unearned income and all income that does not arise from work shall be abolished. So this is in reference to like stock market and speculation, commodities, that type of thing. The idea is that you shouldn't be able to make money off of people doing bad at their business. You don't want people betting against your own people. That's still, obviously you could do like venture capital and put 20% or, give $1 million and you get 5% of the company. You still do that type of thing because now you are actually invested in the company. The idea is, again, no betting against your own people.
I'm sure this would include usury too. No unearned income.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it would. Now, I know they abolished that on the first day.
Yeah.
But I think it falls under here.
Yeah, you would think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Usury is literally that exact thing, unearned income and taking advantage of other people and charging extra money for things not directly related to the service. For instance, a lawyer charging a defendant an insane amount of money, not because it's more expensive for them to help them, but just because he knows that he has no choice.
Right.
So number 12, since every war imposes on the people fearful sacrifices in blood and treasure, all personal profit arising from the war must be regarded as treason to the people. We therefore demand the total confiscation of all war profits. Now, I don't know for sure if this is specifically referring to World War I. I'd assume it is, or just conflict in general, because there were a lot of other smaller conflicts going on between the two world wars, but Germany wasn't a direct part of any of them, I don't think. But basically, this is trying to prevent the corruption where you have private oligarchs, private organizations, a lot like we have today, that are making a lot of profits off of selling weapons, selling equipment, selling, mercenaries. That doesn't directly benefit the people at all. All it benefits are the people at the very top. I mean, you wonder how, like, a lot of politicians, like one of them who's running for office right now, is how they made a lot of their money. And really, it just provides an incentive to create more wars with no thought whatsoever of what about the people that'll have to fight in them.
If you just think about it, in the last 24 years since the turn of the millennia,
Yeah.
if you had no war profits in the U.S., how many of those wars would we have been in?
Zero.
Very few, very, very few, and
Yeah.
they wouldn't be protracted and prolonged, and the whole funding of Ukraine and stuff.
Right.
I mean,
But what about our freedoms, though?
all of our freedom fighters, wouldn't be, it's just, anyways.
I really like that one. I really like the profit for military stuff. That's really good.
If you leave that out, you're not the guy.
Right.
So then we go to point 13.
Okay.
And it's, we demand the nationalization of all trusts. So I'm not really going to go super long into this one. We have an episode about it. I think it's called The Truth About Economic Fascism. I'm going to link it below. And basically this one just said that the government has the right to nationalize any corporation that is not doing well. But then they didn't nationalize the corporations. They used that power to force the corporations to bully the corporations into treating their employees well. Donated to social programs. So the government had 7% was their spending at the highest point on social programs. But they did this by bullying corporations and doing the right thing. You can watch that entire breakdown if you're interested in going into this more, but I don't really want to redo it. I don't think it's appropriate since we have a whole episode on it.
Sure.
And that's what I got on that one.
All right. Point 14 is somewhat similar to 13. We demand profit sharing in large industries. So this is just either, in my mind, this could be viewed two different ways. You could either all the excess money that a company is getting, the CEO doesn't need $500 million a year or whatever. You're investing in social programs. It's getting back to the people, or you just charge less for what you're doing to your own people. You know what I mean? And that's still a kind of a profit sharing thing, as you're giving everyone a deal
Right.
from what they previous did.
Yeah, and that also prevents, again, just these super disproportionately wealthy, um, successful business owners or whatever, just hoarding all the money for themselves. It gives an incentive for the whole nation, um, which kind of leads into number 15. We demand a generous increase in old age pensions. Now, this is also assuming that the people reaching old age have spent most of their lives, as part of the nation, as contributing, as being really solid citizens. And so, of course, they deserve it. And it's also the idea that the people would want to kind of, reward them for all their hard work through the years, which, as opposed to in America today, we see the government and various agencies and corporations doing everything they can to not only increase the retirement age, but to reduce the benefits of people who retire, because that's not how you make retiring people isn't how you make money in the short term.
Okay. So in point 16, we're going to change topics a tiny bit. And basically it says, we demand the creation and maintenance of a sound middle class. And then it's going to give two different ways that it's going to do that. Okay.
Uh-huh.
First, the immediate communalization of large stores, which will be rented cheaply to small tradespeople. Okay. So what had happened is after World War I, foreign investors, you could just guess who, came in and bought things for a penny on the mark, and all the mom and pop shop got closed and they built these superstores.
Like Walmart's or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they did it by taking advantage of the crisis, and they believe they were stabbed in the back. We've covered that before. And now there's no middle class. The middle class gets wiped. You got the poor workers, and then you got the corporation owners who own the big supermarkets. So this is a kind of reparations where they go back and say, we're communizing that, which means it's ours, the government's. Mm-hmm. But then they're giving it out to the tradespeople, so that
storefronts.
So that the middle class can now go back into what they do, which is trading and making their shops and stuff. And the second part of it says, and the strongest consideration must be given to ensure that small traders shall deliver the supplies needed by the state, the provinces, and municipalities. And so imagine people are bidding on a contract to make something for the government, and you get preference if you're a middle class person with a small business only employing less than 10 people. Think about how good that would be for the middle class.
Totally.
Whereas in America today, you just have corporations just, sending their, who are the people that they send to Congress?
Like the representatives?
No. They send the people that give money, the lobbyists.
Yeah.
Yeah, they send the lobbyists out there to pad the pockets, and then the corporation always wins. You don't have a chance.
Right.
In the United States. This is the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. This is every good country, the backbone is a strong middle class. They got wiped by being betrayed under the Weimar Republic, the middle class, and now they're going to bring it back in. And a video that never got published, but do you remember when we were filming that one version of Majdanek, the concentration camp?
Yeah.
And they have all the work orders for it, and it's all just local small businesses. Right. And they're Poles. They're not even Germans. They're hiring small business Poles, middle class people, to come in and do these projects. That's what they were doing.
Yeah, totally.
Reich-wide, we'll say.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, number 17. We demand an agrarian reform in accordance with our national requirements and the enactment of a law to expropriate the owners without compensation of any land needed for the common purpose, the abolition of ground rents, and the prohibition of all speculation in land. So we've got a couple of things in here. They're just taking land from people where it's needed for the common good. I was thinking about this in America. It's like, what is that company, BlackRock or something, that's just buying up all the land, and
right.
I'm sure it's going to be rented at exorbitant rates and all that, but that isn't good for the common people, what they're doing. Right. That is anti-people. And then we also have, you can't speculate on land as well. So you can't, try to get things you can't profit off of people losing their land or anything like that. And again, it's just all very people-centric, but in regards to their land.
And then number 18, we demand that ruthless war be waged against those who work to the injury of the common welfare, traitors, usurers, profiteers, etc., to be punished with death, regardless of creed or race. So this just got me thinking, what if this, what all would this include in today's society? Like, imagine car dealerships. Like, how do they make all their money? It's literal usury. Um, Hospitals, law firms, banks. Like, I mean, it'd be harder to find people that like aren't engaged in usury, or profiteers who profit at other people's expense without the um, trying to improve the general welfare. So, especially given the situation Germany was in the Weimar Republic, and also this wasn't really anything new, because throughout the Middle Ages usury was considered a sin, or was a sin, still is, just not recognized. Um, and there were harsh penalties for it. Um, and also, like murder, or some of these crimes that are more violent and appear to be a lot more extreme. A murder will usually affect one person, a group of people who might have known them, but usury will affect an entire country or more over the course of hundreds and hundreds of years. So that's how severe it is, and we're going to be doing some more episodes on kind of some more specific examples of how usury um, caused massive ripple effects of chaos centuries after the events happened.
I was literally driving to the studio, right? And I was thinking in my mind, because I had this run-in with the bankers yesterday.
Okay.
Because they gave me a service charge because they changed their terms and condition of their things without, I don't know if they notified me or not, but I didn't know. And I'm furious. I go in there to talk to them, And so I'm driving over to the studio today, and I'm thinking, if you admit that usury is a sin, then every banker who dies before they end their profession of banking goes to hell because you're in an unrepentant state of sin,
yeah.
right? So
Okay.
you could be retired and have repented, whatever. But I was just, I don't know.
The scope of this.
It just made me feel good to think that. When I was thinking about those ladies at the bank. I know it's a little rough,
Yeah.
but usury's trash. You're trash. And the girl was up, who was like 18. Like, this is what you're dedicating your life to.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Anyways.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to go to point 19. And it says, we demand that Roman law, which serves a materialist ordering of the world, be replaced by German common law. Now, I started researching this, and I realized, you know what? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand. Like, if you go to law school, you have to take Roman law classes. So you understand it. I'm not going to pretend to talk about it and understand it. But basically, when I researched it, it says Roman law refers to the system as old as 449 BC, used under the Holy Roman Empire, which existed from 963 to 1806 AD, which includes Latin legal terminology, right? And so English and Anglo-American common law was influenced by Roman law, but separate from it. There's one, maybe two countries that just do full Roman law, and I forget where they're at because I researched this a long time ago. But so the Holy Roman Empire was in Germania, right?
Okay.
And so that was 963 to 1806. And so it was when the Roman Empire collapsed on this side. They were still in Constantinople, the Eastern Roman Empire, but then the Holy Roman Empire here. So 1806 is not that long ago that they were practicing Roman law. And basically they just said, no, we want to create our own new system of law for Germans, not for the Romans. We'll take the good and the bad, just like the English and Anglo-American common law was influenced by it, but they made their own. That's what he's saying they should do for themselves. And it goes back into self-determination, stuff like that. Every people should have the right to make their own laws and stuff.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
All right, point 20. In order to make it possible for every capable and industrious German to obtain higher education, and thus the opportunity to reach into positions of leadership, the state must assume the responsibility of organizing thoroughly the entire cultural system of the people. The curricula of all educational establishments shall be adapted to practical life. The conception of the state idea, science of citizenship, must be taught in the schools from the very beginning. We demand that specially talented children of poor parents, whatever their station or occupation, be educated at the expense of the state. So, there's definitely we're going to call it brainwashing, but this is infusing your kids at an early stage about your own people and pride in your people and like that type of thing. Carrying your own weight.
That's racist.
Oh, it is racist. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it just seems very rational to me and logical. And then they're also making a point to call out for looking for the exceptional people, because making those great people greater, it raises the whole people, because those are the people that are going to be innovating and improving your, how good your life is with, air conditioning or whatever things that they invent. All that goes to making the people as a whole better. And I'm just a fan of that whole thing. It seems great.
Yeah. I saw a quote that I've never seen before by Hitler from 1945. And in it he said if we had our elites, we would have won the war. But we basically had what we had. That's not a direct quote,
Okay.
right? And I was thinking about that. If you don't understand that point that you're talking about, you don't understand what he means by the elites. He's not talking about the elites like you think in America.
Right.
He's talking about what we had were children who grew up without a father because their father died in World War I. And the state stepped in and started training them this, that. Their children were going to be amazing because now they have their father, all the education and training that their father has, plus the state helping them. And they're going to create people who are maximal. Like, if you have a potential IQ range, these ones are going to be at the top.
Right.
Through nutrition, through training, through educational opportunities, through medical care, et cetera, et cetera. And I just thought, if you can understand that concept and what they were doing, it's beautiful. If you can't understand that, you're like, oh, it's state propaganda. Okay, I just want to say this too. State propaganda, but watch this. I'm going to link a video in the description below about when they came to burn the books.
Oh, right.
Remember? The Nazis burned 25,000 books about child pornography and stuff like that. And the Allies burned millions of Nazi books that talked about family, tradition, health, all this stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Because they were trying to squash that and make them say, average with Americans today, who eat, well, we eat worse than them. Anyways, whatever.
Well, now it's about lowering the bar so that everybody can pass. And we're talking about the opposite of here. Let's make people as great as possible.
Right.
Because we're not all the same.
Yeah, if you said, can America the American government, federal government's going to take over all the education and all the curriculum and stuff like that in every school, charter school, every in the country? I'd say no.
Yeah.
Heck no. It depends. Are you trying to raise the bar or lower the bar? And
Right.
He was trying to raise the bar, and he did, but he just couldn't raise it fast enough in the short
You
period.
need
before
another
the war.
generation. Yeah.
Right.
It makes you wonder what their boomer generation would have looked like in another world.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because once the Allies won the war in America, for sure, because America had reached unprecedented prosperity, their generation, it was super comfortable growing up. Probably one of the best times to grow up, but for a lot of it, it just turned into a lot of apathy, taking it for granted, which isn't really their fault. Like, if you're born into that, it's kind of a natural thing, but yeah, it just makes you wonder.
Yeah, because their boomer generation would have been galvanized by the system, pushing them to become even better than their fathers.
Right.
The next one, the state has a duty to help raise the standard of national health by providing maternity welfare centers, by prohibiting juvenile labor, by increasing physical fitness through the introduction of compulsory games and gymnastics, and by the greatest possible encouragement of associations concerned with the physical education of the young. Now, that's something we see a little bit of in America, although it's declining. We have like the maternity welfare centers, obviously in the West, are turning more and more into Planned Parenthood, and that's how it's defined in a lot of ways, like how easy is your access to either abortion or childcare. In childcare, meaning that you're not raising the family on your own, you're relying on someone else to raise your kids for you. But one nice thing is that in America today and in a lot of the world, we have sports, people play in school, but it's not really the same, because it's hard to say. It's in America, we have the professional sports, and what I've been gathering is that people are brought up, and then a few, like only the best of the best, really play the sports their whole lives, like such a tiny fraction of the population, and then they make insane amounts of money doing it while everyone else just sits and watches. But I remember the Gaddafi video. Didn't he nationalize a lot of these stadiums and then turn them into public sporting centers where basically anyone could go and play or
Yeah,
something
true.
like that?
That's true.
Yeah, I just think like how much better and healthier everyone would be if sports were, mandatory. Because in schools they're not mandatory, and in a lot of cases they take away from the education that you get. So yeah.
That's a good point because you know how you have PE and stuff.
Yep.
But what if you
Uh-huh.
also had the requirement to be in one sport? You'd have to at least be,
Exactly.
and then you get credit for it, but like you're
Or not even a sport, that there's just some activity that you do. I mean, I see videos of, I don't know if it's Japan or whatever, but there's just an entire park full of people and they're all doing the same little dancey
the Tai Chi
karate looking
or
thing.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's their exercise, and I think that's amazing.
Right.
And as he was talking about this, I was thinking about the health of kids. And, when I was a little kid, we didn't have phones and all that. So we were outside all the time. And, like, would he have a point on here about screen time for kids?
Oh, interesting.
You
In
know
our
what I
day
mean?
and age, right.
Yeah,
Modernized.
if you were to change this
Yeah.
around, I just feel like that really fit in with his thing about the health of the kids.
Right. Interesting.
And there should also be a lot more opportunities for people. Like if someone really wants to get into a sport, it shouldn't cost them an arm and a leg to do it. Like in an ideal and healthy society, the government should be encouraging everyone to, or whether that be the local government or whatever, you just sign up and then they'll do what they can to help you to succeed rather than the other way around.
Okay, so now we come to point 22. This one's short. It says, we demand the abolition of the regular army and the creation of a national folk army. So you remember under the Treaty of Versailles, they only had 100,000 people in their army. So they trained officers because officers take longer to train than soldiers. And they wanted to be able to rapidly rearm, And so what I take from this is Hitler kept all the generals and stuff for the most part. And he kept them there. So it says the abolition of the regular army and the creation of the national folk army. I think what they do is you just change the name and you say this is now belongs to the German people of now. So you could clean house if they don't.
Sure.
It basically gives you that authority. It reminds me of the nationalization of trust. It gives you the authority to boot them because this is not your old army.
All right.
This is the national folk army.
We'll see if you qualify.
Right.
Yeah.
Based on your upholding your duties as a citizen, it's your loyalty to the right, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this one's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. This is gonna be kind of a long one, but this is wonderful. Number 23, we demand that there be a legal campaign against those who propagate deliberate political lies and disseminate them through the press. In order to make it possible the creation of a German press, we demand A. All editors and their assistants on newspapers published in the German language shall be German citizens. B. Non-German newspapers shall only be published with the express permission of the state. They must not be published in German language. And C. All financial interests in or in any way affecting German newspapers shall be forbidden to non-Germans by law. And we demand the punishment for transgressing this law be the immediate suppression of the newspaper and the expulsion of the non-Germans from the Reich. Newspapers transgressing against the common welfare shall be suppressed. We demand legal action against those tendencies in art and literature that have a disruptive influence upon the life of our folk, and that any organizations that offend against the foregoing demands shall be dissolved. So, a lot of stuff in there.
How many of these have you heard that you haven't heard watching this and you just get so excited?
Yeah,
And you're just like, yeah, baby. That's when I hear that. I've read this before. You know what I mean? I hear this and I'm like,
that's a
goodness
great
sakes.
point. Once I had gotten to the point where I was starting to understand how the world really was, he sent me this and I read it and I'm like, wow, Nazis seem like pretty good people.
Yeah.
This is great. And it's, as time has gone on, terrible.
Anti-Semite.
Right, of course. There were a couple that I was like, I didn't agree with at the time, but as time goes on and you think about stuff more and more, I'm all in. It seems great. So this is just about keeping the Germans being informed by Germans and not being influenced by the outside. Now, I know if you put this on Twitter or something, people lose their minds because, it's state-controlled propaganda and all that.
Which we do not want in the United States.
Right. First off, yeah, we already live in that world.
Right.
That's what we have now. And this is not about suppressing opinion. This is about a people having a certain, I'm just going to call it like an alley or something that is based on their culture and their morals. And you can have any conversation you want in there. You could have a newspaper that talked about flat Earth, and my newspaper could talk about the round Earth. That's fine. We can have that discussion. It can be different opinions because it's not like a state-controlled thing where you have to believe the Earth is this or that. But if you start talking about teaching kids about sex when they're 6 years old, that's against the morality and the culture of the people, and that's what they're going for with this, is keeping that negative influence out of the German culture.
You can't even finance them.
Right, yeah. If you're not German, you can't invest or be involved anyway.
No foreign influence on your newspapers? Boy,
crazy.
They must have not known what was going on at any time. You know?
And non-Germans can't even have a newspaper in German. Like, it has to be a different language. That's amazing.
So you know the separation.
Right.
Again, not the chameleon thing like Garen said.
Right, yeah, you're not allowed to blend in. So, yeah, I'm all in on 23.
Yeah, and also because when you have... That's kind of the conundrum between tolerance versus, assertiveness and standing your ground, is that if someone, like, if you aren't gonna stand up and protect your identity, someone else is gonna eventually overrun that. Someone who doesn't have that morality, but they'll just overrun. Like, you're just weakening yourself if you are, don't want to stand up for who you are. So number 24, we demand freedom for all religious faiths in the state insofar as they do not endanger its existence or offend the moral and ethical sense of the Germanic race. The party as such represents the point of view of a positive Christianity without binding itself to any one particular confession. It fights against a Jewish materialist spirit within and without, and is convinced that a lasting recovery of our folk can only come from within, on the principle common good before individual good. Well, this is actually one of the issues too with America and a few other cultures that have existed throughout the past, is that it's extremely individualistic. I remember you guys did the episode on the myth of the rugged individual and how that's even sold using Christianity. A lot of people will interpret the Bible to basically say you have free will, therefore you should be your own individual, make your own free choices, and therefore individualism's a good thing. Your salvation's dependent only on you and nobody else around you. So that turns into just isolation in the long run. And whereas throughout, really up until the Industrial Revolution and it was all over the world, people had to rely on each other. They couldn't just be individualistic. And what better way to weaken a society or a culture than to turn everyone into an individual, completely abandon your ethnicity or your nationality, who you come from, and then have phrases like every man his own priest, right? That nothing will lead to a bigger separation than that. And when it says freedom for all religious faiths, that means you can be a Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, a Hindu, potentially a Buddhist, but there's a couple of faiths that have specific passages in them that would, like, if they were to be taken by the letter, it would potentially pose a risk to Christians, because it says that it doesn't endanger the existence or offend the moral and ethical sense of the Germanic race and a positive Christianity. So obviously it's saying that Christianity in general is the race of the German people for the sake of this particular point. So there's a specific book that I think you guys have heard of that talks about some not great things about Christians. And then also in the Quran, there's a couple of verses that I forget the actual verses, but they aren't too friendly towards people of other religions, especially Christians either. That being said, do most Muslims or even like people identifying as Jews hold to that? On average, probably not. It's just that risk is in there, so you never really know.
You know, I was thinking about, like, you know how they say first he came for the Catholics or whatever, you know, blah blah blah, and you know, but you know, I talk about this a little bit. There's this Catholic priest who was in Berlin, and every day he got up on the pulpit and he talked bad about Hitler, you know, and at one point somebody told Hitler, like, hey, should we just go pick that guy up? We could throw him in a camp, you know, and he said same thing he said in Mein Kampf. He said, I'm not a religious reformer, you know, because he gave them their religious freedom. But so I think when they talk that story and they say, but they came for the Catholics. Do you mean the guy who was Catholic, who was a social democrat, communist?
Right.
Do you mean they came for the Catholic who was work shy, or the gay Catholic?
Catholic wasn't the reason; it just happened to be an attribute of
Right.
a person.
Yeah.
And I remember when they were America was going up Italy, and Germany was defending, and they're looking over this whole plain, and there's this huge, beautiful abbey. It's historic, and they said, "What are the chances there's Germans in there? Bomb it." So they sent the planes, and they just bombed this beautiful historic Alp. You know who was in there? Catholics.
Oh, okay.
It was the perfect defensive fortification for the entire area. Not one German soldier. That's not ours. We can't just, you know. And of course, they appreciated art and beauty and history and, you know, stuff that America just, you know,
yeah, it does
no
not.
clue whatsoever. Okay, so point 25.
Point 25.
Okay, so this one, it says, keep in mind when you listen to this one that they're writing this in the 20s, and so they're thinking about the future state.
Okay, gotcha.
They're not writing this as they're in power. They're writing this, and it says, in order to carry out this program, the entire program in the last 14 points, to do the first 10 points, the creation of a strong central authority in the state, the unconditional authority by the political central parliament of the whole state and all its organizations. So when I think about this one, I mean, you could think about it back in his time, but there were all these interests entwined in the Weimar Republic that controlled it. And that reminds me of the United States today, where we have all of this agency capture going on. All these different corporations control the CDC. They control all these agencies. The science grants, everything's just controlled by the people profiting, by the corporations profiting. And you want to say, no, I want a strong central authority that has absolute power. Because, like if you said the CDC has power, today they don't. They have power to do what the hand that feeds
what they're told to
says.
do. Yeah.
And so the corporations actually have the power. It just looks like the CDC. You could do the USDA in our food. You could just go down the list.
Sure.
So I understand what they sound scary when you hear that.
Right.
But do you want your government to be in control of government activities? Yeah, kind of. Because who else do you want to be in control?
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then you want it to be composed of the people. You know, I think it's reasonable if you think about it.
Yeah. I meant to mention this earlier, but as I was going through these, I saw a lot of this reactionary, and which reminds me of the laws that America was founded on. It was reactionary to how the government was treating them, and they were trying to protect against future government issues. And, you know, this is in reaction to a whole different set of problems. And I just wonder, like, what other things are out there that, you know, as we're thinking towards the future, you got to adopt a whole bunch of things. Like, this isn't the end-all list. There's other things to think about, and because you know, this is a very focused.
Right.
It's trying to address certain problems.
Right, and you can't help but be reactionary.
Yeah, it's tough to know what do I need to react to 100 years from now.
Right, but you got to get the things that are
that
choking you out right now. Yeah,
totally.
Kieran, what do you think about the entire thing?
Well, first, about just that one point you just brought up, it's kind of a general rule throughout history, really. My main focus is Europe, but you're either going to have a strong monarch, and that can be a king or a queen. That can also be someone like Hitler, or even a president of the United States, just someone who's really strong as a person. Either you're going to have a strong monarch, or you're going to have a bunch of really strong oligarchs and a weak monarch. Which of those two is more likely to have the interests of the people in mind? Well, monarchs are hit or miss. You have a few good ones, you have a lot of bad ones. Oligarchs, you're almost never going to have one that has the interest of the people in mind.
Oh, okay. It's always the
So,
bad choice.
yeah. So it's between like you might very well have a solid leadership position who and monarchs in the past, especially kings, they were tied directly to their country. It wasn't like today where it can be someone from anywhere who just happens to be popular and get elected in. In the past, a lot of kings didn't want the position and they'd abdicate or they'd give it to someone else. But that would basically be the equivalent of a father who has a bunch of kids and decides he no longer wants that responsibility. That's why, um, and then in the West, especially, we've been taught that a monarch is one of the ultimate evils, especially in America. But um, that being said, like today in our world, are there any monarchs left that are really actual monarchs and good? No, like not except maybe you could argue a few in the Muslim world, but
Saudi Arabia, yeah.
yeah, but not even Putin. He's not even a monarch. He's a, I mean, I'm kind of on the fence with him, honestly. Um, but yeah, overall, um, yeah, a lot of really solid points. And especially, it's especially good that we have, especially with your channel, so much of a background of and not just giving the viewers this document and expecting them to understand it, but kind of building up to it through the past year of doing episodes that really puts it in a lot more context.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this week of looking at these 25 points of the National Socialist Party in Germany. Thank you, Garen, for joining us all week. I appreciate your input and your other opinions off of what we normally do. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed this week of episodes. Let us know your comments below if you like this, and we'll see you next time.